Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. We have our three panelists here. Today we're going to be discussing the recent Google algorithm update, the one that happened back in August, and there have been some subsequent sort of smaller updates actually very recently in the last week. And we're going to be looking at how it's affected local businesses, also in general how it's affected sort of certain industries, and we're looking at some examples of certain businesses that have gone up, have gone down in the rankings, some have benefited and some have been sort of hit very hard. And I've got three esteemed panelists with me today who are going to help me kind of dissect and discuss this topic. So I'm just going to get them to introduce themselves to you. So Joy, would you go first, please?
Sure. My name's Joy Hawkins. I run an agency in Canada, in the Toronto area, called Sterling Sky, and we focus on local SEO mainly. And I'm also recently the new owner of the Local Search Forum, which is a forum kind of dedicated to everything to do with local search.
Thank you very much, Joy. Let's go to you next, Marie.
Hi, so my name's Marie Haynes, and I'm also in Canada, not too far from Joy, in Ottawa, Canada. We have an agency where what we do is primarily help websites that have been hit by algorithm updates. So we've reviewed a lot of sites that were affected with this latest update, and I work by far more on the organic side than local, but I think we can still have some good conclusions based on the sites that we've reviewed.
Fantastic, we definitely will. And Andrew, please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, Andrew Shotland. I have a company called Local SEO Guide. We are also an SEO consulting company. We have specialties in multi-location SEO, as well as nothing to do with local SEO, working on monster websites, startups, all kinds of websites. And we do a lot of work also with agencies that sell SEO as a channel, but maybe it's not their core competency. So we sometimes white label services or get them out of a jam when they hit a brick wall, which has happened a lot with this Medic update.
Excellent. So it sounds like you guys have got such a nice breadth of experience, some purely local, some actually kind of more organic, but with real kind of detailed understanding and analysis into these updates. And Andrew, you know, not to call you a jack of all trades, but you certainly covered a number of bases from the kind of scale and approach.
Yeah, we're, as it says on our website, branding is not our expertise.
A quick bit of housekeeping for everyone listening in. As per usual, we have two wonderful people helping us answer your kind of Q&As. And if you've got questions, please put those in the chat sort of section of the control panel, which on my view is the second one down, the little kind of sort of speech bubble. That's where we'll be kind of reviewing all your questions. And Colin Nielsen, who works with Joy at Sterling Sky, is on hand as ever to answer those. So thank you very much, Colin, for helping us out yet again. And Matthew Coughlin, who heads up our business development at BrightLocal, is also on hand to answer any of your questions. And we have a couple of other hardworking people, Rosie and Jamie, behind the scenes, making sure that things go on as they kind of should do and run smoothly. So if you've got questions, go in the chat box. We have got a hashtag of Algo webinar. So if you want to kind of take part in any kind of Twitter chats, please use that hashtag. It is being recorded, and the video recording and the recap, i.e. the write-up, will be available on the BrightLocal blog on Friday. So if you want to kind of go over anything again, or you have to kind of leave early, please kind of go there. We had a huge sort of sign up and registration to this. I think we almost get 900 people register for this kind of webinar. So we're expecting a very good kind of show, sort of turnout today. So thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us. Why don't we jump into the agenda now? Loosely, the agenda is split into three parts. You know, it's all around the update. The first bit is what happened, who's been most affected, why did kind of Google do it, what was their intention, really kind of getting into the kind of fine detail about this particular update. And all three panelists have provided some excellent slides that will help them illustrate some of their kind of points. And the next bit we're looking at, you know, how do you respond to an update, you know, changes in strategy that you might want to kind of implement or adopt. And again, our panelists will be providing their own kind of insights to how they might have adapted their own strategies or what they're advising in the kind of some of their kind of consultation work. And the third section, we'll look a little bit about just algo updates in general, how these three guys look at an update, how they analyze an update, what tools they use, what's their playbook for, you know, kind of digging into algo updates. So you might be able to kind of replicate that and use that for some of your own analysis the next time algorithm updates hit. So we're trying to give you a bit of a playbook for yourself there. So, okay, let's start the kind of the first topic. And Joy, when I come to you, can you just give us the headline facts about this update?
Yeah, so Miles, do you want me to control the slides here myself?
Absolutely, you go for it.
Okay, Perfect. Yeah, so mainly with this update, we saw it had a pretty significant impact on both local and organic, which is definitely not true for all algorithm updates. Like a lot of times it's one or the other. Like Possum, for example, was just strictly local results, and you've had, lots of other organic related updates like Fred that didn't seem to really impact local. So this one impacted both. I'll kind of show you guys some examples of what we saw. This is a screenshot taken from BrightLocal's rank tracker, which is the main thing that I usually use to try and figure out when algorithm updates happen. And one of the kind of patterns we noticed with this update that is not necessarily true for previous ones is that we saw a lot of sites that increased or decreased organically and then had the opposite happen locally. So like in this example, in this graph that you see here, the red is organic. So you'll notice this particular site had an increase in organic for this particular term, and then they had a decrease in local. And then I think this next one here is like another example where they had a pretty big local decrease and then a sizable organic increase. So for me to take away with this specific kind of observation is that the two algorithms are becoming more and more different. A lot of people, look at search results and they're like, hey, if I'm there organically, I should be there locally, or vice versa. But they're really becoming very different as far as the factors that influence them. Seeing more and more of that happen. And then also,
Joy, can I just jump in there and throw a question across to Andrew? Does that kind of sort of chime with what you've seen? I mean, I guess for me, hearing what we've been hearing about algorithm updates, with the organic algorithm having a much bigger part to play in local recently, is this a distinct shift in strategy from Google?
Yeah, it's at this point it's kind of super hard to say, right? It may be happening in isolated cases, or may be happening in every case across the board. We're actually working on our latest update, this year's update of our local SEO ranking factor study that tries to look at this across hundreds of thousands of businesses, and the data is being crunched right now. So it's a bit hard for me to say, these algorithms are diverging. My gut says is they're not actually, but it's just gut. But look at any individual website, you'll see stuff like this too. So typical SEO consultant answer, maybe.
I guess we don't work in an exact science world, so
yeah.
So Joy, this example you got on the screen here, is this indicative of lots of cases, or is this one specific case you've seen?
We saw this in lots of cases. So I was really careful not to share examples where it was like, this one thing that I observed in this one particular business. We saw like pretty much, I looked at, I'm going to say, just give you a number, somewhere between like 30 to 50 different sites, all local businesses. So, lots of like lawyers and dentists and sites like that. And this was quite common. So we saw this not for every keyword, but for a handful of keywords for every single business. We saw this common pattern. There's actually a thread on the local search forum that shares a bunch of different examples. So you can kind of see like it wasn't just one case that we started specifically for the Medic algorithm update. So there's quite a few.
Okay. And what is your, I mean, obviously it's a huge drop there in the kind of local rankings. Followed 2 days later by a nice little uptick in organic, but then the local one seems to come back a bit. Are you doing some work on this particular client to start to kind of claw back some of that ranking?
Yeah, so this one actually wasn't a client. This was a company we did a consultation for a while ago, but I left their ranking tracker up. And so I would say that no, like I don't think there was any work that was done. I think it's just whenever an algorithm update happens, normally you'll see kind of this fluctuation for a few days. So I think it was just more like a correction. Anything else?
I don't know. Marie, do you want to pitch in at this point?
Sure. I mean, I think we have seen the same sort of thing that there were, I actually think, and I think Joy agrees with me too, that there were two updates. There was a local update and there was an organic update, and they're two separate things. So we saw a lot of sites where their local presence changed dramatically compared to their organic rankings, and it just didn't seem to make sense. So the things that we're seeing causing organic drops I think are completely different than what's causing the local issues. And I don't even know if anybody thoroughly knows what the local changes are with this update.
I mean, are we thinking two updates are entirely separated, or is the local one like a precursor to the organic one?
I mean, we've said for years that your organic ranking can affect the ability to rank in local, but I kind of feel like that's separating a bit, that Google is separating the two algorithms. But I still do feel like they're very, very much different algorithms.
Yeah, I see them as completely separate. I think they just share some of the same factors, which is why people often think that, like, local is just organic plus some, reviews and a few other factors. But I personally, based on like the last few years of kind of looking, I really think they're just separate things. And the reason why there often is correlation is because they do share some of the factors. But I've seen cases where factors that do not impact organic rank do impact the local results. So I definitely think they're more different than they used to be.
Okay, great. We'll explore it a bit more. Joy, why don't you carry on with your examples?
Oh, sure, yeah. The next slide here. So this is typical for this is not specific to Medic, but with every algorithm update we see in local that's fairly large, we see like a surfacing of spam, which is kind of funny. So like I actually had a lawyer client who was complaining in August that his call volume had dropped, and we're looking and everything kind of looks fine, but what ended up happening once we kind of dug in a bit was for his near me keywords, so like car accident lawyer near me or things like that, there was all these spam listings that did not exist before. They were lead generating companies that had set up, like there was I think over a dozen of them just within like a certain mile radius, and pushed a lot of legitimate listings out of the 3-pack. And they weren't there before, and that's common. We see this a lot with algorithm updates, unfortunately. So, our first kind of line after doing that was to go and remove them all. And now things are picking up, and like we checked in with him in September, his calls are getting back to normal. So kind of crazy that happens in local.
That is crazy, because am I right in saying, from what I understand, the algorithm update, so much of it is about the trust and authority that a business or website has to talk about a specific topic, yes?
On the organic side, yes. On the local side, no. I mean, if that was the case, these types of listings would never rank anywhere. This one doesn't even have a website attached to it in the screenshot. And the phone number was like a tracking number. So I've seen that whole authority thing that really plays into organic doesn't seem to play into local much at all, unfortunately.
Yeah. So Joy, why do you think that site was able to rank just completely on keyword stuffing?
Yep, it's very impactful.
Wow.
Like I know Andrew's study that they did a few years ago, hopefully I quote this correctly, said like the adding keywords to your business name made a difference of like 1.5 positions. I've seen lately it's like 2 to 3, if you add in keywords to a business name and watch how the ranking increases. Really stupid, but yes, it does still work.
I can confirm.
Yeah. Someone did a study recently where they tried keyword stuffing a name, right? And then it kind of got removed by by the kind of Google for it was kind of taken down. I think they tried it multiple times to see how long it would take for them to get some sort of permanent ban. Is that right? Does that ring a bell for you guys?
We wrote an article, or Colin wrote an article on the Sterling Sky blog about using 50 different cases of keyword stuffing and what happened with each one. I don't know if that's the one that you're referencing. Yeah, it was pretty sad and pathetic, our findings, as far as Google's, enforcing of this and their ability to keep someone from doing it again and again. But yeah, we wrote it out. I'll find the link and I'll put it in the chat box here.
That'd be good. Yeah, that was fascinating because it was multiple times essentially whether you could repeat offend, and Google would just sort of would remove the keywords, and that was all they would do. They wouldn't take any kind of punitive action against you until a certain threshold where they just, obviously just really annoyed them by kind of going too far. But it's not much of a deterrent, is it, for people to kind of be participating in this sort of activity. Anyway, spam is not really the topic of the conversation, but it is an interesting one. Joy, why don't you carry on with your slides?
Sure. Yeah. So this is funny. This was probably more up Marie's alley. I did not look into, the drop on this one, but it was definitely more organic because this was a site that was a lead gen site, and I still had access to Google Analytics from a long time ago, and I looked and I was like, holy crap, that is an insane traffic drop, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing. Well, I guess it's bad for them. But I think that Google is, not really wanting to show lead gen sites. They want to show, the sites that have like authority and quality, which generally don't apply to lead gen sites. So this is one of the most extreme examples I looked at. This is using the Barracuda Penguin tool, like panda and penguin mashed together, which is an awesome tool for analyzing updates from algorithms. So that's another one that we use quite frequently. And then, like at any search.
Sorry, Joy. Just go back to your last slide. Then. What do you read into that slide then?
Well, I wouldn't want to be these guys, but this is like strictly Google organic visitors, and it tanked right after the Medic update. I think that is a direct result of just the type of site it is, and that given the niche that it's in, Google is really wanting to show high authoritative sites that have people writing for them with credentials and things like that, which are often not true for lead gen sites. Usually, it's SEO people writing copy and that type of thing.
Okay, can we just pause a little bit and just kind of broaden the kind of discussion out of it, just for the benefit of everyone sort of listening in? And we're going to go to Marie next. It's called the Medic update. Why?
Maybe I'll cover that if that's all right. So when this update first happened, the thing that I noticed was that it strongly affected a lot of health-related sites. And so Barry Schwartz from Search Engine Roundtable noted the same thing. And so he was the one who sort of coined it the Medic update for that reason. But the thing is that it really was way broader than that. And so in my opinion, the update was almost 100% about trust. And the sites that we're seeing that had issues that dropped had things like maybe they were not honoring refunds, and all of their reviews online were saying this business has problems because of this and that. But it's all sites that Google would classify as your money or your life sites, so YMYL. And so if you have a website that helps people make an important decision in their lives, whether it's medical, financial, legal, or even anything else that doesn't fall into those realms, then you're considered your money or your life site. And so I think that what happened with this update was Google was saying, look, we want, they added a section to the quality raters guidelines just before this update that said we want to protect the safety of users. And honestly, I think that that's what this is all about. So we call it Medic, but you don't have to be a medical site in order to have been affected by it.
Well, and what is the quality raters guidelines?
Right. So I sort of threw a few things in there that maybe need a bit of a back explanation. These guidelines are a book that anybody can get online. So Google publishes them now. They used to be private to Google, but you can search for search quality guidelines, and it's 160 pages that Google uses to train these people called quality raters. And the quality raters, they're not the same as the web spam team. What they are is people that are contracted out, and there's believed to be tens of thousands of them. And what they do is they take the information in these guidelines, and then they answer questions about searches that Google's asked them to do. So Google may say, search for this medical term and tell us the site that's ranking number 1. Would you trust this site? Would you give your credit card information to this site? Things like that. And so if the quality raters en masse are saying, oh, there's a problem here, and these sites are ranking well, even though they have trust issues, then that feeds back to Google's engineers, and the engineers then tweak the algorithm so that hopefully that type of thing doesn't happen again. So when we see an update that, now we don't call them, we don't really have names for every single update. So whether we called it Medic or it's just really a core quality update, in my opinion, almost all of these have to do with something that's in these quality raters guidelines. So we use them when we do our site reviews. We have a whole checklist that's just based on what's in these guidelines. And it'll say, Google's told us that this is a measure of high quality. So is this happening with this business? That type of thing. So hoping that makes more sense there.
Yeah, it does. So what are the factors? So you talked about reviews, for example, for a business, or whether trust and authority. trust and authority are separate things in this case?
Yeah, so the quality raters guidelines talk about this concept called EAT, and that stands for expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And this really is going to be the biggest buzzword in SEO for a while, I think. And people would say, well, how can Google algorithmically determine whether you have EAT? And this is what we're seeing with these updates. So the quality raters, they're instructed to look at things like they're actually instructed to look at reviews. So maybe on Yelp or on Better Business Bureau and see, it says right in the guidelines, an example of a low quality site is one that has a negative BBB listing. And so Google doesn't want to rank those in a good position. So EAT is this thing. And so I think a lot of people, now that we're hearing about EAT, what they're focusing on is the E. I've had people say to me, I'm a doctor and my site was hit by this medic update, but yet I've been practicing for 15 years. And the thing is, if you're not recognized as an authority, which is the A in EAT, if you're not recognized online as an authority, then you may have trouble ranking. And so all of these things sort of factor in with these algorithm updates.
Okay. Andrew, I'm going to come to you to bring you in. I've heard sort of people talking about more about the content than links. And we know those two things are kind of key kind of authority signals to kind of Google, but apparently it's more content related than it is link related, this update. Do you have a view on that?
So the data we have shows that, or it maybe just implies that that's probably right. Although we see clients, and I'll show this in the slides, some clients that have been doing, a combination of content optimization and link building actually perform very well post this update. But our general theory around this update, kind of like what Marie was talking about, there's definitely some kind of expertise or authority filter on the sites that got bumped down. But I guess in trying to think about it like a machine would think about it, we're less inclined to believe that there are 10,000 people pushing a button that says this site is bad because I looked at a Yelp review or a BBB review. That may happen. More about, there's something about the site that algorithmically implies it's not as good as other sites. And typically we see that's around either bad user experience, which again, from a machine's point of view, not from a person's point of view, and really confusing overlapping content. That's kind of the way we see it.
So you're saying user experience from a machine point of view. Could you just kind of give it more detail on that?
So if you think like a search engineer, or you try to think like a search engineer, you design an algorithm to try to mimic actual human behavior or human response to what a site is. But that's only going to get you so far. That's probably why they have quality raters, because they need someone to actually look and say, the color of this website sucks or the review sucks. But the algorithm probably doesn't rely on that to a tremendous degree, because that doesn't scale particularly well, even if you have 10,000 people doing it. So you have to kind of assume that it's using a lot of scientific stuff, for lack of a better word, to try to create a formula. So this thing plus this thing plus this thing equals a bad website or a not as good website. And so part of our jobs is try to kind of guess at what that is based on looking at signals and different things, and then try to kind of account for it.
Okay. Joy, just going back around to you. Obviously, you've got an example here of a lead gen site. In terms of the organic performance of kind of local business websites, which generally often aren't particularly good, and probably from an authority point of view aren't as sort of well known or well linked to as other sites. Have you seen any kind of influence that big brands have got a boost in organic, but sort of smaller independent businesses have sort of suffered because of this?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't have any big brands that we monitor on like a huge level. So that'd probably be a better question for Andrew, I would think.
I can't say we've seen across the multi-location sites we have access to. I can't say we've seen anything that was like post August 1, they took off. We didn't see anything quite as dramatic. We're just seeing, I guess, what you call brands generally lifting up after that, but it's not like they were down before that.
So you haven't seen brands sort of win out in this sort of scenario, no?
I don't recall seeing any of that in any of our data where some Fortune 500 company or something with 10,000 locations suddenly just skyrocketed.
Okay.
When this first hit, we had a couple of multi-location businesses, like very large brands, contact us saying they had seen drops. And so I initially thought that maybe the local aspect of the update affected multi-location sites. And I do think in some situations, Google was preferring local authorities over the large brands, but not in a way that's easy to measure. So just for certain queries. So I do still feel like there was some type of component to this where, if you were a multinational chain and you lost a little bit of rankings, it might be that, maybe the small guy that's known as the authority in that city saw a bit of a boost. And that's, I don't think you can like fight against that other than maybe doing a whole whack of PR in that particular town or city so that you're known as the authority for that service.
Okay, so good to takeaways, for local businesses or independent businesses that they haven't necessarily been kind of downgraded or suffer at the hands of this algorithm update more than bigger brands, which they haven't sort of past updates. Bigger brands have been kind of promoted above them because Google kind of felt that they had more trust in those brands because they had a higher authority and more well known. Okay, Joy, why don't you kind of carry on? I think, Joy, your video might be kind of freezing every now and then. Your audio is going through fine. Either that or you're remaining incredibly still, which is very impressive.
No, I kept turning my thing on and off to see if that helps, but I'll.
Anyway, your audio is going through very crisply for me, so I wouldn't worry too much about the video. Why don't you carry on with your slides?
So I had the privilege of going up to Marie's office in Ottawa right after this algorithm hit, and I was going to share one example. I had her team look at a client of ours who had an organic drop, totally fine everywhere locally, like they dominate and get so much traffic from local, but definitely on the organic side, they went down for almost all of their major keywords. One thing that she pointed out to me, which isn't really something that I caught, was basically that this content on the site when you first go on is very like content for SEO. It was written by a company they hired like a couple years ago and was hard to read, contained a lot of keywords. It was not very well laid out, didn't highlight anything really good about the business. So we're in the process right now of actually redesigning their entire site, redoing the copy, and I'm really interested to see what impact that has. But she also pointed out something that I thought was really interesting, which was when you look for reviews for them, they had a BBB profile, Better Business Bureau profile, with a negative review. And that did not exist before. It was recent. So I'm guessing whoever submitted the complaint actually created the profile for them. And I don't know if that's, directly related to the drop in any way, but it's definitely something that we're exploring. So it's something else that she picked up on.
When we get to my slides, Joy, I'll share an example that talks about that. So keep going.
Awesome.
I'll come back to that, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much close to the end here. We saw lots of SERP feature changes, which is very typical with algorithm updates. Lots of more video carousels for terms that I don't think should show videos. Like, I don't know why I would want to see a video carousel for a dog bite lawyer. Not really a great result, in my opinion. And then we also saw an adjustment. I'd like to say it's an adjustment because it was sites that got impacted by Medic. We saw an adjustment on the local side from September 8th to 11th. So a lot of sites that went down went up a little bit more on September 8th to 11th, and then like vice versa. And then here's some screenshots.
Sorry, Joe, that last slide, would you mind just kind of talking us through that a little bit more?
Explain this?
This one.
Yeah, this is So this is taken from BrightLocal. This is one of the tabs that's in the local ranking tracker. And so what we noticed here is like, this is the number of position ones. They have the number of position 2 to 5s, and I think that's 6 to 10, the third column. So like you'll see there's like quite a difference in the number of 6 to 10 for this one that happened right between September 8th to 11th. In comparison to before. So we saw like a decent amount of change in that time period across all their keywords. And then this is one where it's like a very specific keyword, just showing like the difference. You know, they had like a drop with medic, and then September 8th to 11th, they had an increase. And I think I've got one more on here. Yeah, so this is like here another one. So you'll see this guy like tanked locally. The green line is local rankings. The red line is organic. So this guy tanked, looks like them both. And then you'll see like on September 8th to 11th, they started to kind of increase there. Wow. And I'll post a link to the thread discussing this as well, because there's another whole thread about this particular adjustment.
But was that just simply another Google adjustment that brought them back in? So they were essentially, they were kind of caught out in the original update, but brought back in a further update.
Yeah, and then the other guys can see if they like agree with me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the update on the 8th to 11th was an adjustment to the medic algorithm update, which I know has happened historically. People will update out, and then they'll like see what happened, and they'll be like, oh, we should like fix this and that, and then things change slightly.
Yeah, there's a lot of tweaks.
And then. Yeah, it was like a tweak. And then we saw the same thing on the 26th, which I think Marie included in her newsletter. But this is like the 3 different dates outlined. So we've got like medic, where they were 22nd position before that, then they jumped up to 6, and then at the end of September went back down to 12. And this was strictly organic. I think that's the end of all my slides.
Yeah, these ones are mine here. Did you want me to jump in, Miles, and talk about...
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. All right, great. So as I said before, I mean, we deal mostly with organic sites, and I wanted to share this case. This was a site with a lot of medical information, and they first came to us when they were hit in February of 2017. And I really think, and we didn't even give this update a name, but February 7th of 2017 was the biggest algorithm update of 2017, in my opinion. And I believe that that's where Google started putting EAT into the algorithm. So on February 7th it happened, and then 5 days later, on February 12th, Gary Ish from Google tweeted this kind of random reminder saying, hey, you should read the Quality Raters guidelines. And, I asked him, was this coincidental, or is it possible that some of the Quality Rater stuff is being incorporated into the algorithms now? And he confirmed that, yes, this is the case. So this site, when we reviewed it, they had loads of really good medical information, but their authors had no medical expertise whatsoever. And so one of the things that we advised them was, and they have, fairly good budget. So what they did was they hired physicians that were known as authorities in this particular medical space. And their author bios now say it was written by this particular person and medically fact-checked by Dr. So-and-so. And so, and they truly were medically fact-checked. They also did things like the Quality Raters guidelines talk about making sure that medical information is highly cited, so that you include references to medical research articles and anything that can back up to say, look, I know we're talking about a medical topic, but here's what the science says. And so we did a number of things like that to improve the EAT. And with the August 1st update, they saw a massive return almost to the rankings that they had before, which I think is primarily attributable to EAT. There's
so sorry, just to recap on that then. So yeah. You adapted their strategy to essentially bring in more kind of trust sort of references, either into the writing, but also linking out to associated articles from other trustworthy sources.
Exactly. I mean, imagine that you've just been diagnosed with some kind of rare disease. If you do a search, I mean, it's one thing to read the stuff on WebMD and Mayo Clinic and stuff like that, where they're all going to say the same things. Here's the symptoms. Here's how it's diagnosed. And then there are, if you can read information from somebody who has written an article about this disease because they've done a lot of research and they're a really good writer, that's one thing. But if you can read an article by somebody who has treated this disease for the last 30 years and has seen, thousands of patients that have this condition, of course you want to read it from that latter person. You want to read it from the person who actually has the expertise and is known as an authority in that area. So that's what I think, that's what we were trying to accomplish with this client. Now, to be fair, we changed a lot of other things as well. So it's rarely just fix this one thing and you're going to see improvements. Any of the sites that we've seen that saw dramatic improvements with this algorithm update, we've been working for a long, long time to improve site quality across the board. So, it's hard to say it was just because we added doctors, but I really do think that helped them make their improvements.
So also a good question coming in terms of author bios, what sort of stuff should you be putting in there?
Sure. So what we don't know is how does Google algorithmically determine EAT? And so I asked at PubCon Austin, Gary Ish was talking, and I asked him, how do you do this? And I didn't think he would actually answer me, but he said it's primarily based on off-site links and mentions. So meaning from authoritative sites, and he even said, we know which parts of the web to trust and which parts we can't. So if you get a mention on the contributor section of Forbes, Google knows that that's pretty easy to buy your way into that. Whereas if you get a mention from the New York Times, it's unlikely that that is something that you've done for SEO purposes. It's a true natural mention. So primarily EAT, it's not like you can just write better author bios and all of a sudden you're going to have good EAT. Your authors truly do have to be known as authorities in their space, and they have to be published in other places, in my opinion. I can't say this 100% for sure. But we still do want to put as much as we can on the author bio. And also, we like to have a page specifically for that author and that brags about, here's why you should read the information from this author. So they have this many years of experience. Or let's say it was a medical article and they aren't, physicians. You could say, so-and-so has been writing about diabetes for the last 10 years since her diagnosis, so saying that you have some personal experience, that's something that can help. And then we say things like, we've been quoted in these authoritative places, or she, regularly gets published on authoritative sites like this site and this site. And so what you're trying to do, and it's hard because a lot of our nature is not to be braggy about ourselves. But that's what we want to see. You want to be saying like, look, here's why we are the experts and we're the ones that you should be reading this info from. So that's the type of thing I like to put in the author bio.
Great, fantastic. That's very detailed. Thank you very much. Please carry on with the slides.
All right, so this next one is an example of a site that dropped with the August 1st update. And it was a site that was in a nutrition sort of niche, a very, very competitive term. And what we noticed when we went on the site was all of the initial content you'd see, so I'd call it the above the fold content that you could see before scrolling down, was just complete sales. So if you were going there to get information on this topic, most of the people going there are not looking to buy a product or to be sold to. And the product would say, it's $150, but just for today, we've marked it down to $50, that type of thing. And it had all of this content that really didn't inspire trust. It kind of looked like a spammy lead gen sort of site. And they have since cleaned up. So I wrote an article about this and actually mentioned this is why I think this site was hit. And so they took away all that salesy stuff and did a few other things like citing references and things like that. And so there was an update September 27th, just recently, which I think was a tweak on the August 1st. And they're starting to see some gains back again. And I think it's because they've removed these things that would make people not trust the site, if that makes sense.
Sure. I've got a question for you, Marie. A couple of people have said, how does this relate to, say, a typical local business? And I might bring Andrew here as well. How can local businesses sort of learn from these experiences of these, larger, kind of more generic websites?
Well, my take on it is this, whatever happened with this update is actually, it's the organic stuff affecting the local stuff, right? And so if you fix the organic, you probably have a better shot at showing up in the pack, even though they're different algorithms. But what we've seen, the sites that we've been working on that have been slaughtered by this thing, it never seems like it's, oh, your Google My Business page is screwed up or something, right? It's always something that if they weren't a local site, I would be like, oh, this is just a typical SEO problem you have. There's nothing to do with local.
But if you're a local plumber and you're producing kind of content, how, given these experiences you've seen, it's quite hard for a local plumber, right, to kind of find someone who's a super authority on plumbing, because I don't know, there is like a sort of, a super authority on plumbing, but how does a local business start to showcase itself as an authority? This guy could be a plumber for 25 years. He's probably fixed every problem kind of going, but then so have all the other plumbers kind of in the area.
Think about what would, again, how would a machine gauge authority for a local plumber? It's probably reviews and links and then proximity, right? Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And I think that reputation plays a big role here. So if you were a plumber and you were trying to improve your recognized authority online, then what I would be doing is looking at ways to get press, to get good press. So, maybe you can do something for your community and get the press talking about it. You're trying to find ways to get mentions in authoritative spots, but it doesn't have to necessarily be like the plumbing authority. If I was a plumber here in Ottawa, I might do something and get mentions in some of the Ottawa papers, some of the Ottawa blogs that are very well known. And so what we're seeing, part of what we do in our reviews is we actually look at, like, are other people talking about your business? Because again, the Quality Raters Guidelines, they talk about if you're a Your Money or Your Life site and you have no external reputation information, then Google doesn't want to rank you well. Well, they don't actually say that, but they say that's a sign of low quality. So if I'm a local business and I'm trying to improve my authority, it's getting more people talking about me. And that could be doing things to build up press, or it could be creating content that actually gets people talking about, I'm sure there's only so many ways you can talk about how to, unclog a toilet, that you're not going to replace that. You're not going to rank number one for this and all of a sudden be the authority. But for example, look at, not far from where we are here, we recently had a tornado, which was very unusual for this area, and a bunch of houses were destroyed. And so as a plumber, I could write information that's very specific to, like, here's the types of things that could happen with your plumbing after a tornado has hit. And then that gives me more recognition in the press as like, oh, this plumber keeps popping up everywhere, and in connection with plumbing. That type of thing is what I would be spending my time on.
Okay, fascinating. Thank you. Please carry on, Marie.
Okay, so this is the site that I wanted to come back to about the Better Business Bureau. So again, I know I'm harping on the Quality Raters Guidelines because we've been extensively studying them for a couple of years now, and I know not everybody agrees with me 100% that in their importance, but it says specifically in the guidelines that if a business has a bad rating on the Better Business Bureau, that it's a sign of very low quality. So this particular site, the person is known as an authority in their space. They have tons of expertise, and we're looking at this saying, like, why did this site drop? And then I looked at their Better Business profile, and this red banner appears. It's not just like a negative ranking. It's a banner saying, like, warning, people are saying they can't get a refund from this company. And so Google is saying this company has problems. And so they saw an even further drop with this latest update on September 27th. And I just noted yesterday that when we go to their BBB page, that warning's been removed and it says the business is working on fixing something. Something like that. So it'd be interesting to see if they jump back up again with a future quality update. But the point is that, and all throughout the guidelines, there are examples, very specific examples with screenshots of websites saying, oh, this site has a pattern of complaints where users are saying that they got scammed or they couldn't get a refund or they were just unhappy with a lot of things. And so that's where it becomes hard, because as an SEO, I can't fix a business that has bad business practices. And so sometimes, I mean, in the past, we could take this site and if we could get enough links pointing to it, it could probably rank again. And Google, in my opinion, is getting better at saying, we don't want to rank this business because it has problems and we want to protect the safety of users. And so we're just going to suppress it until those problems are resolved, which is kind of scary from an SEO perspective.
Well, it's rewarding genuinely good business, isn't it? It's taking kind of real world experience that a business is providing and translating that into its online sort of visibility. Andrew and Joy, a question for you around local. We've talked a little bit here about things like reviews on BBB and other sort of platforms or sort of sites affecting organic ranking. Now, I know often from the local search ranking practice study, when they looked at localized results versus local pack results, reviews and ratings have had a very, very small level of impact. Are you seeing that changing? Do you anticipate, in the next study findings around localized organic, that reviews and ratings are going to have more impact?
On the non-pack results?
Yeah, on the non-pack results.
Oh, yeah, I don't really see those other than, getting star ratings as featured snippets, and having actually thinking of them as keywords, let's just say, or content on the site. I don't see, like, because I have a great review, I'm going to suddenly show up, higher in localized organic.
Okay. Yeah, other than the BBB example, I've never seen anything that leads me to believe that reviews on local sites like Yelp, Facebook, etc., impact organic ranking.
That said, we see a lot of reputation management problems where a bad review will just show up right at the top result for a brand query, right? So, whatever, local company name sucks. And so there's something going on there with sentiment and, I think what they call query deserves diversity algorithm. But I don't think that's necessarily review based.
But if in these guidelines that Marie's been kind of talking about, it specifically instructs these, I can't remember what they're called, these individuals to go and look on, these review sites to qualify whether a business is bona fide and genuine. That must be therefore having some sort of feedback into the organic algorithm.
Well, those pages, like the Yelp page, tends to rank pretty well for businesses, for business brand names, right? Mm-hmm. Because 1, it has a lot of content. 2, Yelp has a ton of links. And 3, a lot of people search Yelp brand queries and click on them. So, but I don't think it's because they have, what a machine would consider a review that makes them rank better. It's because they have all these other factors that add up to, this thing should rank well.
Yeah, one of the things that we don't know is how much of the stuff that's in these guidelines is actually reflected in the algorithms. There was a really interesting article on CNBC just last week or the week before where Ben Gomes from Google was quoted in saying the quality raters guidelines, they don't exactly reflect the algorithms, but they reflect where we want the algorithms to go. And so to me, that was significant. So again, if the quality raters are there's one line that says, even if a business has a mildly negative reputation, that can be a sign of low quality. So what we're seeing is, the sites that have dropped August 1st, there's almost always something that we can find where we can say, look, this is going to cause people to not trust this site. So one example was a site that offered a free product, but then it turns out that you really had to give your credit card info and you're going to get charged for it. And that type of thing is what I think was happening. And, so I do think that negative reviews can affect you organically. But I think it's all about the overall sentiment. So, if you get a couple of negative reviews, it's probably not going to tank your site. And I don't think it's like black and white either, that it's like, you have this many positive reviews, so you must rank better. I think it's Google saying, like, look, there's an obvious pattern of problems with this business, and then that can affect the organic rankings.
Okay. Marie, thank you. I might just jump ahead, Marie, to Andrew's slides. I know he sent some other slides in, and we've only got about sort of 10 minutes. So, there we are. We're next. Andrew, over to you. Marie, that was lovely. Thank you very much.
All right. I'll blow through these. So, this is a client that we actually just signed this week, and oddly enough is in the health field, a local business with a few locations. And you can see they got slaughtered after this update. And, I don't know what it is, like 50% decline in organic traffic. But when we kind of did a real quick analysis, when we got the analytics, we were kind of surprised to see this next set of data, same site. So what we see is their traffic just went through the floor, 70% down in the 2 months post Medic update, but their conversions have all gone through the roof. And so what this says to us is they were ranking for a lot of stuff that didn't convert. So it kind of looks horrible to the client. This is an agency, by the way, that we're working with. So they're concerned about how this looks to their client. But what this early analysis shows is, well, actually, there's no problem in a way, right? Because their conversions are doing great. And so what was probably happening is Google was sending a lot of traffic to pages that didn't convert, and somehow they could figure that out and just said, okay, you don't need that traffic anymore. So if this thesis holds throughout our audit, then the idea is to look at, well, what's the stuff that's converting, and how do we expand that versus how do we try to get back what we had on this other stuff? And I think the general quality of this site that we see a lot, not even with Medic stuff, but seems to have been exacerbated by this Medic update, is this site has a ton of content. The content's actually seems on the surface level what I call authoritative and well written, well laid out. Probably they maintain it's the best in their industry or at a very high standard. But their site has a lot of what we'll call topical overlap, meaning they have the same content 50 different ways. And we think that's a big problem. We've seen that outside of this update be a big problem with sites. It seems like that problem in and of itself has been exacerbated by this update. So thinking about how to solve that problem, I think for this particular site or any site, we think is going to yield a benefit. Here's another example of a site. I guess you'd call this in the Your Money or Your Life a Your Money site. But it's kind of, to me, like a generic SEO site that just has a decent brand. There's nothing unique about this site at all, except its brand slightly. But you can see post-Medic, the site as a whole was down. But the pages where we did what we call semantic optimizations, which is essentially rewriting copy to have more keywords we think are relevant to a query, what we might call co-occurrence keywords. So the example I use is, if you have a page about Manhattan, you probably should have the words New York City on it, because every other page that Google sees about Manhattan probably says New York City. So that'll make you more relevant for the word Manhattan by having that page. And then pages that we were doing link building to, very natural link building. We were doing link building. Both of these page sets saw pretty decent growth when the site as a whole was tanking after this update. So, and again, there's nothing special about this site other than the brand, and maybe they have a ton of links and they've been around for a long time. But their category is completely generic SEO spam category.
So Andrew, is your kind of takeaway or your advice then is that if you're a practitioner who's building good semantic content and building genuine links, just do more of the same?
Well, do it in a smart way. You may have problems on your site. Again, to that first example, the site we think has a lot of problems in that there's a ton of content overlap that, and I'll kind of get to that. But once you kind of solve those problems, then you have to kind of use your standard SEO tool set. There may be cases like what Marie was talking about, where there may be some negative thing going on in BBB. Sure, you should totally try to solve those things. But as she also stated, and we see all the time, I can't get you to change your business. I can only move the levers I can move. And so these are the levers that an SEO can typically move without a lot of really cajoling on the client's part. This one I think is a really good example. It's a B2B site, and we did what we call decrufting. In the middle of the summer, basically, we got rid of as much content overlap as we could on this site. And you can see post-Medic, this thing is cranking up. It's not huge numbers because it's a B2B site, but the value that these guys have gotten out of those small numbers has been extraordinary. They have a very high value product and service that they sold. So getting 10 more people to contact them is meaningful. And again, all we did with them was fix technical issues a long time ago, but really focus on getting rid of a lot of this content overlap stuff that's going on in dead weight pages, and then do some pretty good link building, I think.
How do you, in terms of kind of decrufting then, which is a great term, sounds like something you do, like you do to your dog. What does it mean when you're looking at, say, 10 pages? How are you working out that 3 of those pages actually are unnecessary? You know, what's the sort of formula?
Funny you asked that, Miles.
Oh, look at me go.
So we use a couple of tools. This isn't our complete tool set, but for the sake of brevity, go into Google Search Console and look at the performance report in the new Search Console, or the search analytics report in the old Search Console. And you can basically sort pages or filter pages by a query. So let's say the query is pediatrician. You can see how many URLs you have on your site that show up in Google for pediatrician queries by sorting by that query. And then you can see where they rank and what their click-through rates are. And generally, if they don't rank for much or they get no click-through rates, it's probably a candidate for decrufting or optimizing. Another way we use is, one of my favorite things is creating a Google custom search engine. And you actually, I think, stripped the link, so I'm going to put it in the chat. I made a Google custom search engine for BrightLocal that I just put in the chat. You can click on. They're free to use. And basically what it does is create a search engine of a domain. And you can use that to kind of get a really good idea of how Google sees the content on your site relevant to what keywords. So if you click on that BrightLocal link I just put on the custom search engine link, and you search medic, you'll see that you have 2 posts on the medic update that look pretty similar. And so to me, one of those posts is a candidate for decrufting, depending on whether the data supports it. But that would be a really easy way to kind of find what are all the pages that are kind of apply to a specific topic on your site, and then looking at the analytics and going, do these pages do anything? So we have a kind of a basic set of rules that we use. Of course, it's totally depends on the situation and the client and the site. But if your page ranks on page 1 of Google and has links to it from other sites, then you're going to optimize it, meaning do the semantic relevance stuff, create more internal links, update the title tags, whatever. If a page ranks on page 1 of Google and has no links, you probably want to get some links to it because it's already a strong authoritative page. If it doesn't rank on page 1 of Google, you're either going to rewrite it or redirect it. And if it doesn't have it should have, and it says it has links. And if it ranks on page 1 of Google and it has no links, you're probably going to want to delete it because it has like 0 value. And those are kind of the general rules we use. Of course, as I said, it's custom situation for every client. But just following these kinds of concepts, we've had a lot of success, not just with these medic sites, but with any kind of SEO problem, kind of consolidating the authoritative content on the site.
And you're generally using quite long tail keywords
No.
for this. You know?
We just did an audit on a site that wants to rank for pretty high volume mortgage terms. And so like private mortgage insurance and HELOC and things like that. So you definitely want to figure out the long tail strategy, but there's plenty of room in the head and mid too.
Joy, I want to bring you back in, Andy. Thank you very much for that. Joy, looking at this sort of strategy for clawing back some lost traffic, or rebuilding, or making, or I guess capitalizing on this change. From the local point of view, what how have you adapted your strategy in your consulting work?
Well, I have to say, Andrew's summary is awesome because it kind of summarizes what we do, but it explained it a lot better than anything I've ever outlined. So I would say 100% that one of the biggest things we do with clients when we first get them on is consolidating content, basically looking for duplicate articles, things that are really talking about the same thing and trying to consolidate them, which is, I guess, foreign to some people because a lot of the questions I normally get with new clients is like, how many blogs do you write for me a month? And I usually tell them we actually don't do much content writing for the first few months because we're usually consolidating. We're actually doing the opposite, where we consolidate content, removing duplicate stuff, and we actually see better results from that sometimes than adding new content. So I think that's solid advice.
Yeah, it's really one of the things we really like to do is be really analytical in our audits. So it's not just, oh, you have a lot of topical overlap. It's like, oh, look, these pages get no traffic. What's the point?
Yeah. So exactly. We have clients where, like, when we first look at them, you know, like 80% of their articles get one visit in the last year. It's like, really? Why do you want these?
Right. And we have this on our own blog. You know, doctors are their own worst patients, right? I've been trying to get someone to decruff localseoguide.com for a while but it's hard because they're your babies, right? You don't want to delete a post or something like that, or no index post. But it seems to work.
So just trying to understand, so you'll be removing pages that don't have that much value to you. But how does that mean that the one page that does have value benefits from that approach? Is it because you've redirected any kind of links of authority into it, or Google is essentially penalizing you because it thinks that you've got an unnatural kind of content profile?
I think the way to look at it is, hey, you have 10 different pages for how to recover from the medic update that all seem pretty similar, meaning the concept that they can rank for are all pretty similar. And so which one is the one to show up? And you're kind of spreading the strength around. And so by kind of either deleting these pages or redirecting them, or even just focusing all the internal linking on one of them, doing whatever you can to kind of make it clear to Google, this is the one. What we see is that tends to work. And again, it's like your mileage can vary depending on how big your site is, how many links you have, all that kind of stuff. So it's not by no means is it like a perfect solution. It's just that it's one of the tools we have, and again, we've had some success with it.
Okay, great. And Marie, back to you in terms of updates to your sort of strategy or advice that you're giving to businesses or consultants that you work with.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with what Andrew said about having all of this extra content. And it can be tricky sometimes too, right? Because I've had some clients that have read stuff about thin content and then have gone and removed, years worth of blog posts, and they've in turn removed a bunch of internal linking to their site too. So you can't just willy-nilly go in and say, I'm going to get rid of all this content. A lot of the time, you've got to consolidate it. And so like Andrew said, if you have 5 different posts on the medic algorithm, then you need to make sure that, you put all of those into one great post, as opposed to just deleting 4 of them. Because I think you sometimes can do more harm than good. There's one site that we reviewed that was hit August 1st very strongly. It was a very large brand, and it's the one that doesn't fit into my theory about the whole trust thing. But now that I'm thinking of, this talk, they have a ton of cruft. And so what we've been talking about is they have duplication across multiple domains and things like that. So it's possible that sort of contributes to, I know that contributes to overall quality on a site. So I think doing content cleanup is almost always a beneficial thing.
And Joy, any other thing on the sort of local side you'd like to add in terms of strategy? I mean, I guess it's probably a bit unclear, the impact that this has had on kind of local rankings, because it seems to have been, the opposite effect in sort of some cases. But in terms of sort of GMB optimization or anything that's purely local, are you changing or adapting your advice?
No, I mean, honestly, we had very little ranking drops on the local side for clients. It's kind of hard to say, what to do if you're in that situation. The one thing that I mentioned earlier that I will really hammer down on is really to keep an eye out for spam. That is one of the biggest strategies that we use with clients that are in spammy industries that just has fantastic results. So that's what I would.
So look out for it and report it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's go to the last one section. We are over time. Just 5 minutes quickly. Just when algorithm updates hit, what is the first thing you do? Joy, let's stick with you for this question first.
So as far as like how to find out if you've been impacted, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. And how do you understand what's going on? How do you start investigating it?
Yeah, I usually start with Search Console. Ranking trackers first, I guess, and then if I see something there, I'll go to Search Console and I'll do some filters in to filter out like branded queries and just see what's going on traffic-wise. And then usually I'll look at clicks over impressions and just look for the keywords that had the highest amount of click drop when you do the compare option. That's generally where I start. And then I cross-reference that with Google Analytics to figure out if these are even pages that convert, if I should care about them.
Okay, and any other tools that you use beyond that?
I usually just stick with BrightLocal, Search Console and Analytics, and then the tool I mentioned earlier, that Barracuda, hopefully I'm saying that right, tool, the Penguin tool.
Oh, you did. That was a good tool. Okay. I'm going to come back and pause here. So someone has just posed a question here. So no advice on how to improve local businesses. I think local. I think we might just want to take a step back just to make sure there's kind of clarity for everyone in terms of the advice that we're kind of giving here. It's not that there has been a little impact in local results, but there's nothing in terms of sort of citations and reviews that you guys have seen to have had an impact or are kind of suggesting we do more of. But you'd be focusing more on the organic signals, ideally on your own sites, the decrufting, potentially doing some more additional link building. Those are the key takeaways that people should be taking here. But also, by making these changes to your site, improving your trust and authority, the two algorithms, organic and local, still linked, question mark over how linked they are. But by making those changes, you should see a positive impact on both your organic performance and your local performance.
Yeah. So go ahead, Andrew.
Okay. So my take is like if you're a local business and you saw a decrease in local pack performance after this update, you should do all the normal things you would investigate outside of an algorithm update to fix your local SEO problems. But what we're seeing is a lot of the sites we're seeing that got rocked a bit or didn't get rocked, it doesn't seem to have been a very specific local issue, much more classic site SEO stuff.
Agree.
Which does, for everyone's benefit, especially that does have an impact on your local performance, because those organic factors will affect your local ranking. But it's not a local issue where there's a GMB update or a category issue or a citation or a review factor that needs to be adjusted. It's about focusing on your organic signals, content, site structure, links, that does obviously feed into the local algorithm. I hope that's kind of answers some of the kind of questions people had about the impact on local. Marie, last question for you. What's your strategy when looking, understanding algorithm updates, investigating them?
So once a week, and actually this afternoon is my time for actually reviewing all of the sites that we have analytics access to. And over the years, we have hundreds of sites that still have us on their analytics. And what I'll do is look at, are there any patterns? We can usually see, there's a particular day on which certain sites saw increases or decreases, and then we can usually tie that in to say, this was a site with link issues, or this was, a lead gen site. And so I try to make my own approximations on what I think has happened. So we, if I can do a little bit of a mention of my newsletter, one of the parts of our newsletter is that we try to keep people up to date with what algorithm updates have happened. And so that's part of the information. We pay a lot of attention to what's happening in forums and also emails that people send. So emails and tweets, if I'm getting a bunch of people tweeting me saying like, hey, are you noticing an algorithm update? That's a sign as well. And so really it's, we have a team of, there's 10 of us here, but I'd say about half of us are almost all the time working on the newsletter and keeping an ear out to what the SEO community is saying. So that's really my biggest thing, is just, looking at what are we seeing in the landscape that we have access to.
Okay, brilliant. And I think a link to that newsletter has been shared. I think Joy also gave you a big plug earlier, saying it's one of the best things that she invests in. So that's great. Wonderful, guys. We've overrun. But you know what? Actually, testament to the quality of your information is that almost 90% of the people who started with us have stayed with us, even though we've overrun. So great job, and lots of wonderful messages coming through in the kind of chat as well. So just to recap, everyone, the video of this plus the kind of key takeaways will be available on the BrightLocal blog on Friday. So please go there. And obviously, a huge thank you to Joy, Andrew, and Marie for really kind of walking us through the details of this update, showing us some of the kind of examples that they've seen and how they've kind of drawn and assumptions sort of from that. And like I said, looking at the kind of chats, people have learned a lot and taken a lot away from it. So guys, thank you very much. I'll let you all crack on with the rest of your day. And to everyone who's joined us today, thank you very much. Please look out for the next Inside Local webinar, which will be some point probably in the autumn/winter. Guys, okay, thank you very much. Good to talk to you as always. Have a great rest of your day, and thank you very, very much.
Thanks.
Shut things down now. Okay.
Thank you.